மேம் நம்ம ஷார்ப்பா 3 o'clock ஸ்டார்ட் பண்ணிடலாங்க மேம்.
ஓகேங்க சார், ஓகேங்க சார். So all the participants joined, sir?
Yeah, ma'am. Slowly they have joined.
Okay, sir.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Staffs are joining in.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
2 minutes. A warm good evening to all the participants and faculty members of our institution who have gathered here for today's FTP and the thematic webinar on research, innovation and ranking, jointly organized by Department of Physics in association with IQAC and Ratnam Faculty Development Cell. At the outset, I now request Induja ma'am, Assistant Professor of English, to welcome the gathering. Ma'am, please.
Sir? A smile is the universal welcome. With these words, I would like to welcome a respected Dr. R. Manikam Sir, Secretary and CEO of Ratnam College of Arts and Science, Dr. R. Muralidharan Sir, Principal, Ratnam College of Arts and Science, Resource Person, Dr. A. Sakuntala Ma'am, Assistant Professor, Department of Applied Physics, Karunya Institute of Technology and Science, Dr. S. N. Suresh Sir, Dean, IQSC, Dr. Srinivasan Sir, Head, Department of Microbiology, Dean of the respective departments, Head of the departments, faculty members, and every single person gathered here. It gives me immense pleasure to extend you a warm welcome on behalf of Ratnam College of Arts and Science, IQSC, and Ratnam Faculty Development Cell in association with various departments jointly organizing 6 days faculty development program commemorating 1 year of transformation reforms under National Educational Policy 2020. Now, I call upon Dr. Srinivasan Sir, Head, Department of Microbiology, to highlight the chief guest.
Thanks for the opportunity, ma'am. I take this as a privilege to introduce the speaker of today's session. We have amongst us Dr. A. Shakuntala ma'am, who is the Assistant Professor, the Department of Applied Physics of Karunya University. And to quote about her academic qualifications, she has completed her BSc and MSc Physics at Affiliated College under Badiyar University, and we have amongst us an university rank holder and gold medalist for both her UG and PG studies, and then on she has continued her doctoral studies at Bardiyar University's physics, for which she has received a highly commended status for her doctoral studies. And the speaker has also cleared the state level eligibility test by the year 2017, conducted by Mother Teresa University, Kodaikanal. And her work experience spans with about teaching experience at Karunya Institute of Technology, and also with the industrial experience at Cognizant Technology Solutions as a programmer in many trains for around 1 year. And ma'am has got received awards like Dr. Abdul Kalam Teaching Excellence Award by Rotary Club of Chennai by the year 2020, and the Best Researcher Award for the year 2014 at Karunya University, and Achiever Award, another award by Karunya University as well. And he has completed two projects so far, one belonging to the Department of Atomic Energy, another one as a fast-track scheme of young scientists, spanning to a total budget of around 50 lakhs, both the projects combined together. And one project is as of now ongoing with a span of 44 lakh budget under the DST Science and Technology scheme. And her research supervision, she has completed 2 PhD scholars in guiding under her, and as of now she is guiding 4 scholars who are pursuing PhD under her, and she has filed 4 patents in different combined area of research. And she has visited many foreign countries like Japan, Singapore for her research performer, and she has got recognition from various funding agencies like Junior and Senior Research Fellow from DRDO. And she has received a fellowship from National University of Singapore for an internship program by the year 2009, and she has received many awards, oral and poster presentation awards at various events. And for her record, she has the highest impact factor, an average highest impact factor of 33, and the total number of research publications under Scopus and Web of Science is around 44. So such as a renowned professor we have amongst us to discuss on today's topic on research, innovation, and ranking. I deem it as a privilege to welcome you, ma'am, to present your views. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir, for that nice introduction.
Thank you, sir. Now, I take the privilege to welcome the resource person of today's session, Dr. A. Sakuntala ma'am, Assistant Professor, Department of Applied Physics, Karunya Institute of Technology and Science, to address the gathering on the topic Research, Innovation and Ranking. We welcome you, ma'am. You can take over the session.
Thank you so much. So, is my screen visible?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, sir. So I feel very happy to interact with you all through this webinar on research, innovation and ranking, conducted by the Department of Physics, Ratnam College of Arts and Science. So if you think what is research in a nutshell, it's very simple to understand what is research. For example, you can make a stone tool like this by a chance. But it takes more than luck to make a vaccine like this. And during this pandemic period, you know what is the importance of a vaccine and what is the importance of research in the medical field. And if you want to make a sophisticated vehicle like this or a sophisticated communication device like mobile phone, it takes more than luck. We need more effort to do all these things or to achieve some kind of advancements for the sophistication of life. So if you look at the ant, it's called as the nature's lightest heavy lifter. It is incredibly strong that it can carry more than 100 times its own weight. It has a symbiotic relationship with the environment. It means it will help the plant by eating the fungus, whereas the plant will in turn give it food for it. So it has a symbiotic relationship with the environment. It can pass information with its community through complex algorithms. It can work as a team. So a lot of things is there to learn from this creature. And look at the firefly. So it would be very sad world if your children can never see a firefly on a dark night, isn't it? So how does it work based on bioluminescence? How wonderful creature is this? If you look at the lotus flowers, how does it repel the water from it? What kind of nanotechnology coating the creator has given for it on its surface? And of course, the lotus, the beautiful flower, how beauty it is that how it gets that color of a so beautiful color. How does it get? And if you look at a crow, it is a intelligent bird, and it is even having self-awareness just like this. So how does it have such a kind of intelligent? Excuse me. Can come later.
Excuse me, ma'am. Excuse me, ma'am. We are not seeing your slides, ma'am.
Not seen the slides. Okay. So that's why I asked whether you are able to see my slide.
Yes, we can see your video feed, ma'am, but your slide is not visible.
Okay, sir.
Hope it's running on the background.
So maybe. Is it visible now, sir?
No, ma'am. Loading.
How about now, sir?
Loading.
Is it visible?
Your screen is visible, ma'am, now.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Slides are not visible.
Yeah. Yes,
Now it's visible.
The slides are visible now.
yeah, yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. So if you look at your stone tool, it is very easy to invent, right? It will just take your chance. It's just a simple opportunity to make your tool a tool with stone like this. But if you want to make your vaccine for life, or if you want to make your vehicle like this electric vehicle, or a mobile phone for communication, for a sophisticated light, actually it needs a lot of research activities. You can sign here. So if you look at the ant, how incredible it is, right? It is so strong that it can carry more than 100 times of its own weight, and it has a symbiotic relationship with its environment. It means it will help the environment to grow. At the same time, it takes some good things from the environment. So it has a complex algorithm in passing informations, and it can work as a team. So how this creature has all these characteristics, and if you look at the firefly, how does it has such a kind of wonderful lightning based on the concept called as bioluminescence. And if you look at the lotus leaf, how does it has a nanotechnology coating on its leaf so that it is water repellent, and how beautiful the flower is. Okay, so all these things are the incredible science that is present in the nature that we have to learn from it. And if you look at a crow, you can see how intelligent is that, and even it is more self-aware more than the human beings. And if you look at the structural colors of your peacock feather, it is nothing but nanotechnology. And scientists are developing materials inspired by the nanotechnology that is present in the colorful feathers of the peacock. So in a nutshell, I can say research helps to understand and explain how the world around us works. It helps to solve the mystery that is around the world, and it helps to solve the problems of the human beings. So I can also say research as a systematic investigation of finding the facts. When you say fact, it means the truth. So a systematic investigation means it is a step-by-step, programmed step towards the finding the truth, and so that we can solve the mystery or solve the problems that exist for human beings. So it is a systematic investigation for finding the truth, And the data which we collect during this process that we call it as the scientific knowledge. When we say scientific knowledge, it is empirical. The meaning is it is verifiable by observation and experience. It is not just a collection of data, but it is actually um, empirical data. It means which can be verified by observation, which can be verified by experience, and it is not just a theory or it's not just a pure logic. And you have to understand that research is always an ongoing process. It is a never ending process. Whenever we think about research, the certain things comes into our mind, or the publications, the innovations, patent, new product developments, new startups, job opportunity for people, and ultimately the humanity. The first thing you're going to see about is the publications. So why do we publish data? As I told, research is a collection of scientific data in order to find some truth in an authenticated way. So we have to find the solution for a problem, and when we find the solution for the problem, we have so much of scientific data in our hand, and we want to publish the data somewhere in an authenticated place. We cannot just put like that in any website. We need some authenticated place to share our scientific data, and that authenticated place is nothing but journals. So the journals are published by the publishing companies like Elsevier, Springer, and in our country also we have many publishing agencies to publish the journals. And when we do so by publishing our work in the journals, we can have a very good interaction with the academic community. So the journals are the only way where we can interact with the academic community, because we cannot have the conference and workshop and seminars all the time. We need a kind of authenticated source from which we can take the articles, we can read what other researchers have done, and we can also share our knowledge. So it is a way of interaction between the academic community. So the publisher is the person who publish your work, and when you publish your work, you are called as the author of that article, and an editor is the person who communicate between the author and the reviewer. So when you communicate your work, the editor will communicate that to the reviewer, and the reviewer will give some kind of suggestions. They will raise questions, and sometimes they support, sometimes they give an opposition to your work. In this manner, you can publish your works, and a number of problems around us like pollution, air pollution, water pollution, and in this pandemic situation, we have faced more eye dryness. So that is also a kind of problem which we face now. Like that, the problems keep on growing, and we have to keep on finding solutions through a continuous process called research. And we always have to share our knowledge with the community, the academic community, and that is why we need journals. So it is through publication that the research, including its scientific and practical contributions, is disseminated to others in a particular field. So this makes the scientific researchers and practitioners with similar interests aware of new knowledge in their field, and it helps to advance the knowledge and its application. So you can get new knowledge in your own research area. You can identify the persons who are working in your research field through publication. It is just sharing of knowledge. So the better you identify the problem, the best will be your publication. So if you look at what are the steps that are involved in research problems, first you have to identify a broad, interesting topic. Then you have to narrow down to within that broad topic. And once you narrow down the topic, then you have to raise questions by yourselves, and you have to formulate objectives to find the solution for those questions. So you have to have an interest and have to ensure that there is a possible solution for the questions that you are going to raise. You have a right lab to work for finding the solution to the problem. You have a proper expertise, a correct, good expertise with you for your guidance, and you have to make sure whether you feel interesting to work in that problem. Only then you can continue with your research. So if your solution comes out of your interest, then it will be very well reflected in your publication. So more the interest you develop, more the chance you will have to publish your work in as a good quality work. So how interesting will be your publication depends on how interestingly you worked at your lab. So there is something called as full-time equivalent of R&D personnel. So it defines the working culture as like this. When you say full-time equivalent of R&D personnel, it means it is a ratio between the number of working hours a person spend on research over his total working hours. Okay, so what is your total working hour? Out of that, how much working hour you are spending for research? That is called as full-time equivalent of R&D. That is research and development. So it was given in the Science, Technology and Innovation Policy 2013. It was mentioned like this. According to the Global Science Report of UNESCO, India's current global ranking is commensurate with its number of full-time equivalent of R&D personnel. It means if you have a high FTE value, it means you are going to have a high global ranking. So it is imperative that the total number of FTE of R&D personnel increases by at least 66% of the present strength within the next 5 years. It was a statement that was given in the Science and Technology Innovation Policy of 2013. So when I say full-time equivalent, I want to give a small example. See, for example, a full-time employee spends 100% of time on R&D during a year. It means it is 1 FTE. If it is going to spend only 30% of time on R&D during a year, it is called as 0.3 FTE. So like that, you can calculate the value of FTE. And if you are going to increase this value of FTE, it means you are going to land up with high quality research. So what is the best time to publish? Albert Einstein, he wrote his first scientific essay in 1895 when he was only 16 years old. So there is no age limit. You can publish even when you are doing your UG and when you are doing a PG. So it's never too late to start. It is always too late to wait. So you can even now start your research work, irrespective of in what situation you are or what age you are, what degree you are doing. You can always start your research if you have interest. So there are some things which we call as journal metrics. So journal metrics are always used to rate the journal, and we call it as a publication index. So what is generally an index? An index is a list of items that are pulled together for a purpose. So if you make an index, it means you are listing certain things for a purpose. That is called as index. So publication index has a list of journals in that, and we call it as a publication index. So all the publication index and popular citation databases are nothing but journal metrics. It means it will say the ranking of your journal based on the citations that is received for the journal. So when I say citation, it means if you are publishing your work, how many of the other scientific community people are taking your work as a model and citing your work. Okay, how they cite your work, how do they take your article and they refer from it, and how they proceed with their work. So that is called as a citation. So journals included in an index are considered of higher quality than journals that are not. So if a journal is coming under a publication index, it means it is said to have some high quality than the journals which are not coming under in any of the publication index. So journal indexing helps maintain the ethics, because you need a proper ethics for communication, right? So it maintains the ethics and quality in terms of publication. And mainly the role of the journal indexing is to increase the visibility of the work. For example, if you are doing some work, only when you publish your work and when it is getting into a publication index, then your work will be visible for the entire scientific community. So that is how you can increase the visibility of your work. So once the journal, your article is in a publication index, it means it has a good validity, and it is always available. It is always available, and anyone can access with a subscription. If it is a subscribed journal or with an open access, you can freely download if it is an open access journal. So we know there are different publication index like Scopus, Web of Index, Google Scholar, Indian Citation Index. But mostly people will always talk about Scopus. Why they talk about Scopus? Because getting indexed in Scopus is considered as achievement by most journals, because the inclusion criteria are quite comprehensive. It means if your journal has to be included in Scopus, it means it has to satisfy so many criteria that is laid out by the Scopus. So Scopus is nothing but a database. So if you want to know completely about the journal metrics, you should know a little bit of history about how this journal metrics evolved. So you can see this scientist, Eugen Garfield of Philadelphia, in 1956, he started the academic publishing service, in it is called as Institute of Scientific Information, in the year of 1956. So you can see he is a linguistic and he is a businessman, and he is one of the founders of bibliometrics and scientometrics. So when you say bibliometrics, it means it is using some statistical methods, statistical methods to analyze the books, articles, and other publications. To analyze how many authors are involved, how many books are published, who cited whom, like that. It is a statistical method to analyze those things. That is called as bibliometric. And the subfield of bibliometric is the scientometric, which have a statistical analysis of the scientific publications. And citation analysis is a commonly used bibliometric method, which is based on constructing the citation graph. It means it is based on finding out how many times your article has been cited. So based on that, he gave some citation analysis. So the Institute of Scientific Information, founded by this person in 1956, gave a science citation index in the printed form. So what is the science citation index, SCI? So it, if you look at the SCI, you can understand how many journals are in that, and each journal has what kind of impact factor based on how many times it was cited. So that is called as citation index. So the content of that science citation index was disseminated. It means it is taken out in a different, it is taken out to the scientific community through a database that is called as Web of Science. So actually Web of Science is a database which helps the scientific community to know about the science citation index. And Web of Science, later it had different kinds of indexing, like Science Citation Index Expanded, Social Sciences Citation Index, Arts and Humanities Citation Index, Emerging Sources Citation Index, Book Citation Index, Conference Proceeding Citation Index. Like that, it had some 6 kind of indexing within it. And for a science people, we always look at this SCIE, that is Science Citation Index Expanded. So this Web of Science is responsible for releasing the JCR, that is a Journal Citation Report, every year. Usually every year, middle of the year, in the June month, it will release the Journal Citation Report. And what will be there in the Journal Citation Report is the impact factor of the journals that is indexed in the ACIE or other indexing details, or other indexing things like what I told here, with respect to arts, humanities, social science, and others. So in 1992, this ISI was taken over by Thomson Reuters. So Thomson Reuters is a large company which has a group of several other small companies. It is a very big business company. It took the ISI in 1992, and later from that emerged the Clarivate Analytics. So in 2016, Thomson Reuters was taken over by the Clarivate Analytics, a part of it, which publishes the index details It was taken over by Clarivate Analytics, and from then of 2016, Clarivate Analytics is the company which releases the JCR because it got integrated with the Web of Science and it started releasing the JCR. And it also releases something called as ISI highly cited. It means Institute for it means ISI highly cited means it says which author has a very high citation. So it has been one of the factor in ranking the universities, worldwide ranking of universities. In that, this is also taken as a factor. Which is taken as a factor is that ISI highly cited people. Okay, that is also taken as a factor. So this is also released by the Clarivate, and you can see this Science Citation Index. It was first given by ISI, Institute for Scientific Information. It led to the visibility of a journal. There are many evidences which suggest that when your article appears in a database, it means it can have a double the number of citations. That is why people always go for a high impact factor or high Sitecore journals, because when you are going to publish in those journals, it means you will gain visibility for your article. So once you gain visibility for your article, people will start referring your article. Therefore, you can increase the number of citations for your article. So this is how it works. What is impact factor? As I told, impact factor is released every year for the journals that are coming under Web of Science as journal citation report during the middle of the year, that is in the June month. So how they calculate the impact factor? So for all the journals that is indexed in the Web of Science, ACIE or any other index under Web of Science, they will calculate the impact factor based on this formula. How do they do is, if for example, if in the 2019, if they release the impact factor, it means they'll take the ratio of citation over publication. So if it is for 2019, it means number of citations received in 2019 from all the publications between 2017 and 18 divided by the number of publications that was published in 2017 and 18. So they take into account previous 2-year data for calculating the impact factor. And when they do so, they take only articles, the original articles and the review articles into account. They do not take any other conference proceedings or like that. They do not take into account. They take only the articles and reviews. So if a journal has an impact factor of 1, it means on average, the articles published 1 or 2 years ago have been cited 1 time. If a journal has an impact factor of 2.5, it means on an average, the articles published 1 or 2 years ago have been cited 2.5 times. So it is the meaning. So higher the impact factor, it obviously means that the journal is having the higher number of citations. This is how it works. But I want to make a point here. The journal impact factor cannot assess the quality of individual articles. Okay, it doesn't mean that if you're publishing in a low impact factor, it doesn't mean that your article do not have a high quality. It doesn't mean that. So Scopus is another database. Like Web of Science is the database of Clarivate Analytics company. Now Scopus, that is a database under Elsevier. You know what is Elsevier? That is a publication publishing company which publishes the articles through various journals under it. So it in the year of 2016 launched a new metric. So the Web of Science, they use the metric of impact factor, and whereas Elsevier, they came up with a new metric called Site Score in the year of 2016. It was considered as an alternative to the generally used JCR impact factor. That is Journal Citation Report. That is impact factor calculated by Clarivate. So All the journals that comes under Elsevier are measured using 4 different things called H-index, site score, SJR, SCImago journal rank, and SNIP, that is source normalized impact paper. So what is the site score? Site score versus journal impact factor. So site score is by Scopus and journal impact factor is by the Web of Science. So you can see that the difference is the Clarivate Analytics for its JCR impact factor, it takes the publications of previous 2 years, whereas the site score will take the publication of previous 4 years. And number of indexed journals as on 2016, it was 11,000 for Clarivate Analytics, whereas it was 22,000 in case of Scopus. So if you want to access how the impact factor of a journal through this JCR, you should have a subscription. Only then you can access and know which journal has which impact factor. But in case of Scopus, anyone can access the website and you can check which journal has which site score and all. So if the articles and review articles were evaluated in case of JCR, whereas all the publications, whichever comes under Elsevier, it like pattern, everything is given a site score, is taken into account in order to calculate site score in case of Scopus. So what is H-index? H-index is also given by the Scopus, as I said. So if you draw the number of papers on the x-axis and number of citations on the y-axis, and the point where the number of papers meets the number of citations, that value is called as the H-index. For example, if you have published some 12 papers, how to write the 12 papers in an order, an ascending order. Which journal you will rank 1 for yourself. You have to look after the citations of your journals, the publication that you have made. So you can see out of all the 12 publications, one publication got the high citation of 87. So you rank your journal as 1. This I am talking for individual researchers. For example, if I have published 12 paper, then in that 12 paper, I will see which paper has a high citation. One of my paper has cited 87 times. It means I will put that as 1. So like this, I will write the citations in descending order. And I will rank my journals which I have published. Then I have to draw a cutoff line and I have to see at which place the number of times citation goes less than the ranking that you have given for the publication. That place I have to give a cutoff. Then now I can say 8 is my H-index. So this is how you have to find the H-index. So if a researcher is having a H-index of 20, it is considered as good, 40 as outstanding, and 60 as truly exceptional. So the advantage of H-index is that stability. It won't take into account if few of your publications have been cited many times. So it will not affect the index value. If few of your citations are not at all cited, it will also affect your index value. So it has a kind of stability. So the H-index will vary from discipline to discipline. For example, if I am working in the energy field, I have to compare my H-index with the person who works in the energy field only. I should not compare my H-index with a person who is working in some other discipline. If you do so, it will go meaningless. So H-index has to be compared for the people who are working in the same discipline, and it should not be used for people working in different discipline. So H-index is usually higher for researchers with a long career researching. For if you are doing research for a very long time, usually they will have a high H-index value. So when more citation happens in a particular discipline, it indicates that more people are working in that area, and it is a most researched problem. And we also have the Indian Citation Index. As I told, there are 4 major index databases. One is the Web of Science, Scopus, Google Scholar. You all know about Google Scholar. It works based on collecting the citations, and it has its own style. That is Google Scholar. And the Indian Citation Index, it was started by the ex-scientist of NISCAR CSIR, that is National Institute of Science, Communication and Information Resources. I think it's in the year of 2015. Very recently it was started, and it has some more than 1,100 journals included in that, and it also acts as a very good database to know about the article citations which are published in our Indian journals. So while journal metrics and individual researcher metrics all talk about the quality of research articles or researchers, but what I say is what is needed is a thirst to solve the human problems. So by which it is possible that one can make inventions and innovations irrespective of the metrics. So if we have a zeal or we have an interest, we have the thirst to solve the human problems, irrespective of all these metrics, still we can go for inventions and innovations, and we can come up with good products and ultimately help the society. So if you look at the India in research, what its status, we have an aggressive working culture towards establishing a leadership in industrialization and technological development. We have expanded our nuclear capacity. We have expanded our researches on nanotechnology, particularly for pharmaceutical industries, and we are investing heavily for technology-driven green revolution. And our country have many good policies to promote the research activities in science and technology and in innovation. So basically, there are four policies that we can see. In the 1958, the first policy was called as the Scientific Policy Resolution. The Scientific Policy Resolution was found in the year 1958 to foster, promote, and sustain the science activities. To foster, it means when you adopt a child who don't have a parent, how you nourish it and how you grow it. Like that, our country took the science in the year of 1958 and it promoted it, and it helped to sustain the science activities. And we developed very good laboratories for doing fundamental sciences. And in the year of 1983, it was found that not only science, but we need technology. So infrastructure for technology was also established through this policy in the year 1983. And in the year of 2003, it was found that the science and technology should not be a separate body, but we have to integrate those two. And they brought a policy called STP 2003, that is Science and Technology Policy, in the year of 2003. And in the year of 2013, the first time the word innovation was introduced, and it is called as STIP policy, that is Science, Technology and Innovation Policy. So kindly remember this 4 years. 1958, it's a scientific policy resolution which focus on science, fundamental science. 1983, the technology policy statement which focus on technology. 2003, it is the integration of science and technology policy. And 2013, it is the science, technology and innovation policy. And currently we are working for the fifth policy, and it is in the draft stage, and it was kept for the comments and suggestions from the public. And the time was given till middle of the January 2021. It started in the middle of 2020, the fifth draft, the fifth policy on scientific technology and innovation, and it was closed on the January 2021. So what is innovation? First of all, we should have some vision to solve the human problem. So through our creativity and through proper process and development, we can go for some products, and we call that as innovation. So innovation is nothing but something new which you find for solving these human problems, or when something is already existing, if you're going to improve that, then it is also an innovation. But when you make something a brand new one, then it is called as invention. So invention is different from innovation. So innovation is a new method, idea, a product. So the year of 2010 to 2020 is called as a decade of innovations. So our country called this span of year, okay, this decade of year 2010 to 2020 as the decade of innovations. And through STIP policy, they increased the gross expenditure that has to be spent for R&D to 2%. So if you look at the STIP policy 2013, it says like this: scientific research utilizes money. Yes, you need money to do scientific research because you have to work at lab and you have to invest money to develop a product. So you need money to do research and to gather knowledge. And when you gather knowledge, you are bringing solution to your problem, and that solution is nothing but the innovation. And that through that innovation, you have to convert the knowledge back into wealth. That is what ultimately needed. You have to invest money, and through innovation, you have to bring back more money, right? So with this aim, the STIP 2013 policy concentrated more on innovation. It stood as a new paradigm. It means it stood as a new model. It helped in investment in science. It helped in investment in science-led technology, and it helped in investment in selected areas of socio-economic importance. So this framework stood as a model to improve the science, technology, and innovation for the people of our country. So emphasis was given to develop a symbiotic relationship, as I told, like an ant which has a symbiotic relationship with its surrounding. This policy had a symbiotic relationship between the economic policies and other policies of our country, and that way it bridged the gap between STA system and socio-economic sectors. So whenever a new policy is given, it has to be make sure that it has a symbiotic relationship between other economic policies of our countries and with the socio-economic sectors. So that was taken care by the STIP 2013. So it strongly asked the research community to connect with industry, because investment from government side alone is not going to be enough. The private sector also invest on research. Only then we can come up with more products and more infrastructures for doing the research activities. So this was proposed in the STIP 2013. So in a nutshell, we can say STIP policy as a strong and viable science, research and innovation system for high technology-led path for India. It is called as SRISTI. So it was the goal of the STI policy in the year of 2013. So in the middle of 2020, during this pandemic time, the 5th draft on National Science, Technology and Innovation Policy came for public consultation, and then they closed receiving the suggestions in the middle of the January 2021. We totally have 11 chapters, and I'm going to just give you a glimpse of each chapter. So the chapter 1 gives stress for one nation, one subscription. It means the government of India will negotiate with journal publishers for a one nation, one subscription policy, so that all the individuals in India may have access to the journal articles. And steps will be taken by the government of India to improve the awareness and visibility of Indian journals, so that our Indian journals will grow. So why we are publishing in journals with high impact factor and citation score? Because only then our work will get more visibility. So our government is going to take steps in order to increase the visibility of our Indian journals, and it is going to promote our Indian journals so that we can publish in our Indian journals. And it is our duty to publish in our Indian journals. So the chapter 2 is about capacity development. It means the innovation and entrepreneur centers will be established, and research in innovation practices will be made a mandatory component in university and college teachers' professional development program. So every college teacher and university teacher should have the research and innovation practices. So it will be made as a mandatory component, and it will facilitate, of course, it will facilitate the teachers for international collaborations or exchange programs, in the STI. And it also introduced the scientific social responsibility policy in the year of 2020. So scientific social responsibility means we have the responsibility as a scientific community, we have the responsibility to share our knowledge with the public. We have the responsibility to promote the science activities. We have the responsibility to promote the technology in our country. So through this policy, it was taken care that every people who are working on research area have the responsibility to have a social concern. And it was mentioned that worldwide, our country is the first one to have a concern about this kind of social responsibility. And chapter 3 is about financing. So India's gross domestic expenditure on R&D is little low when compared with other developed and developing nations. So that will be taken care, and more finance will be given for the R&D activities. And chapter 4 is about research. So the ease of doing research is very important. So it will be taken care that there are proper environment for the research activities, and the research activities are well funded, so that there is an ease of doing research. And chapter 5 is about innovation and entrepreneurship. So technology parks will be built, and it will serve as a center for demonstration, communication, and technology transfer. New funding mechanisms will be developed along with the expansion of knowledge sharing platforms. So chapter 5 is mainly stressing for innovation and entrepreneurship. So once you innovate and you find a new solution for a problem, you have create job opportunities for people. That is called as entrepreneurship. So technology parks will help the researchers to do innovation and to take that as a product, and to make them an entrepreneur. So chapter 6 is about technology development and indigenization. So indigenization of technology will focus on two major categories for indigenization of product, example aircrafts, warships, etc. By national R&D labs like DRDO, DAE, and so on. Then the indigenization of individual subcomponents of system like turbines, sensors, etc. by academic labs, industry, and startups. And chapter 7 is about equity and inclusion. It means irrespective of the religion, caste, disability, geography, everybody should have an equal opportunity to do the research. That is called as inclusion. And then the science communication and public engagement, that is the chapter 8. That is nothing but outreach activity. So for example, a science museum infrastructure will be strengthened using advanced technologies like augmented reality and virtual reality, so that virtually we can access the lab and see how it is working on. So this is one example for the outreach activity. So chapter 9, the international SPI engagement. So it is for attracting the best talent back home. So many scientists are working in abroad who have Indian origin. So they want to attract the scientists back to home. So this is taken care in chapter 9. So whatever I have told from chapter 1 to chapter 9, it's just a glimpse. It's few points, but so many things are there in order to develop the science, technology, and innovation activities of our country through this STIP 2020 policy, which is the 5th policy. So in line with all these policies, we have different ministries like Ministry of Education, Ministry of Science and Technology, Ministry of Defense, which give funding and which support the students, which supports the faculty members to take up research in diversified areas. If you look at the Ministry of Science and Technology, which was founded in the year of 1971, it has 3 main wings like DST, DBT, DSIR, and CSIR. And the NCSTC, this National Council for Science and Technology Communication, it is responsible for disseminating the importance of science and technology to the community. You can see here in the year of 1987, this NCSTC proposed the National Science Day, which is celebrated on February 28 in remembrance of Sir C.V. Raman. And in 1999, May 11, it is celebrated as National Technology Day. So we also should have a National Science and Technology and Innovation Day, so that we can understand that we cannot separate science, technology, and innovation. these three things can be done separately, but these three has to be merged in order to have a best result, right? So there are different fellowships like BST Inspire for school children after 12th, for UG students, for PG students, for research scholars, and there are exams by CSR NET, which is funding for the research activities. DRDO, it is funding for the research activities. So like that, many schemes are available under different ministries of our country, which helps in the growth of the science and technology and innovation in line with all the 5 policies. So why we need ranking? So it is more difficult to publish in higher quality journals, but if we publish in those journals, it means hard work is involved and expertise or the faculty or student is involved in that particular field, and it means the academic stature of the institution which hosts the publication has given a good environment for the researcher. That is why they are able to publish in high quality. So in order to know all these things, whether an environment is given for the researchers, whether the researchers are really hardworking and have expertise, we need a ranking system. The ranking system is unavoidable. We need a ranking system. So the researchers must have an environment to do research. This is assessed through the ranking. So we have different ranking systems like NAAC and NIRF. So when we say NAAC, that is National Assessment and Accreditation Council. So this system is a grading system. So NAAC is a grading system. It is for about 5 years or 7 years. They will certify you. And it was founded in the year of 1994. The main aim of NAAC is to stimulate. Stimulate means to make you more active. Already the institution will be very active, and it wants the institution to be more active in its academic environment. So it wants to improve the quality of the work that has been done in any institution. That is why the NAAC comes with the grading system. So the major difference between the grade and rank, you already know. Grade is a major step in the promotion process. Ranking is something seniority between the institutions, how quickly you achieve the targets, like that. So according to my perspective, when we are in a good grading system, as a physicist, I can say if the NAAC grading system is like an external magnetic field. You can either align along with the field or you can go in opposition to the field. So when you align along with the field, it means you are in a low energy configuration. It means you can quickly go to the high ranking by spending less energy. So the NAAC accreditation parameters, if you look at it, you can see it has parameters like curricular aspect, teaching, learning, research, innovation, extension, infrastructure, student support, governance, institutional values. So it has totally some 7 criteria, and how these criteria are ranked or given weightage, it depends on whether the institution is an university or it is autonomous or it is affiliated UG or it is affiliated PG. Because this webinar is about research and innovations, I will say only about this research, innovation and extension activity. You can see that for a university, the weightage is 250. For an autonomous college, the weightage is 150. And for affiliated colleges, it is 110 for UG, 120 for PG. So you can see that if it is an autonomous college, more weightage is given for teaching, learning, evaluation, and the next high weightage is for research and curricular aspects. So in the criteria 3, you can see that for autonomous college, you can see there are some key indicators. We can see the innovation ecosystem has a weightage of 10 marks. So when you say innovation ecosystem, it means an incubation center, initiation for creation and transfer of knowledge, workshops and seminars like this for intellectual property rights, and industry, academia, innovation practices, awards for innovation won by institution, teachers, research scholars, students, startups incubated on campus. All these things comes under the innovation ecosystem. So next is the ranking system. As I said, NIRF, so NAC is the grading system. NIRF is a ranking system. So the higher education system in India is quite large and complex. We all know this. And the ranking system was introduced in the year of 2015. And our country has more than 795 universities and more than 30,000, 35,000 affiliated colleges. And every year, 86.48% of total enrollment happens in the colleges. So based on these things, the ranking criteria is giving weightage to different aspects in a different way for the universities and colleges. You can see that the research productivity impact and IPR, this has 20% weightage for colleges. And if you look at the parameter, how it is calculated, the publications have a weightage of 70 marks, and the quality of publications based on citations, it has a value of 30 marks. And it is different from how it is calculated in case of universities. So you can see that if you want to calculate the research publication, you have a formula like this. So it is 70 into F. So here it means the number of publications per faculty. So you're not going to take the total publication, but you're going to calculate the publication per faculty. And for quality of publication, you are going to calculate the total citation count of previous 3 years over the number of publications. So using these metrics, the NIRF ranking is done, and it gives importance for publications and citation. Not only the publication is important, how far it is cited, that is also important. So finally, I would like to conclude my talk like this. So quality research outputs depends on full-time equivalent, that is the time spent on research over the total working time, and also on grants. So for a quality research, we need both money as well as the time and involvement, hard working, and we have to make sure we have to give importance for Indian journals also as a mandatory practice. So these things has to be taken to account while ranking the institutions. So our country has given a vision for all our researchers, okay, how we should work for our country, for the betterment of the society, and how to solve the human problems. We have been given the vision through different policies. Totally, we have 5 policies. The 5th policy is the in draft, right? So we have the good vision given by our country, and it is the responsibility of we, the faculty and the student community, to work hard towards that vision. And it is the responsibility of the institution to give a good environment for the research to happen and innovation to happen. So I would like to conclude my talk with a quote by Louis Pasteur, which is also mentioned in our Inspire website, DST. Science knows no country because knowledge belongs to humanity, and it is a torch which illuminates the world. So finally, we have to work for the humanity. Thank you all. I hope I completed on time. It's 4. Sir?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, sir. I have completed my talk. It's exactly 4 o'clock.
Yeah, yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
So I rest at the end of the slides.
Just a minute, ma'am.
Okay, sir.
Nice presentation, ma'am. I think you have covered the full details about, you have introduced what is the research, how to do it, what is the necessary, and also you have explained why we need to do it. So It's really interesting. Maybe if with your permission, I will open the session to the audience if they have any questions.
Yes, sir. Sure, sir.
Participants, if you have any question regarding the session, you can ask the resource person now.
There is one
Yes, sir.
person requested. Can you please?
Kanagraj sir, you can ask your question, sir.
Yes, sir. I can hear from you, please.
Maybe before that, maybe I have some questions, ma'am. Can I ask you, ma'am?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Ma'am, you were mentioning about the H index, right, ma'am?
Yes, sir.
And so you said that we should not compare the H index with a different field, right, ma'am?
Yes, sir.
Then how we are going to compare the level of the staffs, ma'am?
Sir, ultimately, what matters is whether we are choosing the industrial problems, whether we are going to finally give a solution for the human problems. So when you make one product, it will be more than like publishing some thousand journals. Am I right, sir?
Yeah, yes, ma'am.
So every research should go towards solving some problem. So that is what I mean by that. So you can always rank the journals based on the impact factor or a site score. You can go with anything. As I told, impact factor is given by Web of Index database, whereas the site score it is given by the Scopus database. And we also have our own citation database that is called as Indian Citation Index database. So
Yeah,
while
yeah.
calculating the citation, all these three are taken into account by the NIRF.
Yeah, yes, ma'am.
So we have to make sure that we have to contribute to our Indian journals also, so that our Indian journals will grow. And we have to give importance for our Indian citation index also.
Ma'am,
So
I
why
think
we go for high impact factor journalists? Because mainly for the visibility. So if I am going to publish my work in 33 impact factor and more than that, it means I will have more visibility. So it is mandatory that we have also, we should also contribute to our Indian journals, and we have to increase the visibility of our Indian journals. And that is what I mean by that. And
okay.
straight away for the question of H index. H index is like if I am working in the energy field, obviously more people will be working in this field, right? So more number of citations will come. So H index we have to always compare within the discipline. You cannot, for example, we cannot compare my H index with people of some other department, right? You have to compare within the same discipline. And finally, that is why I included in the conclusion slide, each department has to be facilitated in a different way for doing research. Some research needs laboratory, some research does not need laboratory. So all the kinds of research works are important.
I got it, ma'am.
Okay, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, sir.
Audience, do you have any other questions so that we can allow you to discuss with the speaker? Maybe I think they don't have it, ma'am.
Okay, sir.
Ma'am, once again, thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am, for agreeing to deliver this presentation. It was really useful to all our staffs and also for the students, the importance of research innovation in ranking. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the opportunity. I thank all the participants for your patience. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for your enriching words. On behalf of Ratram College of Arts and Science, I take this opportunity to propose the vote of thanks to those who have contributed to this faculty development program on research, innovation, and ranking organized by our institution. At the outset, I thank our resource person, Dr. A. Sakuntala ma'am, Assistant Professor, Department of Applied Physics, Karunya Institute of Technology and Science. We are really enlightened with your knowledge and presence, ma'am. A special thanks to the organizing committee and the participants for your active participation. With these warm words and a kind message, we move to the end of today's session. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.